Okay, so let's take a look at 3 different assemblies based on the nuts that we just talked about. So here I have my regular assembly. This is the metal to metal nut. It has a 1/2" pin with a 16mm hex drive on the top. I have the high Q assembly, and I have the friction bearing assembly. So what we are going to do is we are going to take one of these at a time. We're going to put them into our torque testing apparatus here. As I turn the handle, the spindle rotates. That allows me to measure the twisting force on the meter over here to the right. So then I can see exactly my advantage going from the to the high Q all the way up to the friction bearing. So let's get started. So let's start with the nut. These have all been tightened to 100 foot-pounds. Go ahead and put that into the spindle. Okay, let's start turning on the nut. And you can see I put 100 in and got about 100 out, or about 50 out. And as you can see, we turned it. We have 100 foot-pounds on the nut, but we only got about 50 foot-pounds, or 48 in this case, out. So the metal to metal nut, not very advantageous to us, is it? So let's take a look at the high Q nut. Again, let's take a look at the high Q nut. Put this guy in. And start torquing down for the high Q nut. And you can see the high Q nut went all the way up to 130 foot-pounds. Big improvement from 48 foot-pounds with the metal to metal nut all the way up to 130 with the high Q. Just showing you how good the advantage is on the high Q style of nut. We are now going to take a look at the friction bearing style. Again, the same pin configuration. And we start testing the friction bearing nut. So up to 160 foot-pounds. As you can see, considerable differences going from the to the high Q to the friction bearing nut. Well, that about does it for talking about the different nut options or standard nut options that we have to offer here at REGO-FIX. In the future, we will talk about coolant offerings, different types of mini or Swiss machine nuts, and something called the AX, the MX, and interlock system. Stay tuned till we see you again.